this event, maybe, and for the future, he will be the co-host.
It's an honor and a privilege.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Set the bar pretty high for me as well, but you know.
Yeah. So can you all guys hear Huw well, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. So we can start. And Artem had a really strong wish that he wants to start first.
Oh, of course.
So he will shoot the first question.
Great. So, Huw, could you please tell us more about yourself and your journey in the marketing and advertising field?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me tonight. And as Marion said, I apologise for not being there in person. I mean, who still gets COVID these days? But me, apparently. But I'm on the mend. But I didn't want to bring it down to London. So joining this way around. So just a bit about me, I suppose, and my journey into marketing insight. So I have been in insight roles for more than 20 years now. I started on the graduate scheme at Millwall Brown, which is now under the Kantar umbrella. And I think, like most people, I pretty much made my way into this industry by accident. I think I was working on the shop floor in M&S, and I was trying to figure out what good my history and politics degree was going to do for me. And during that time, I volunteered with Prince's Trust, and I was creating surveys for the young people who applied for loans and grants to help understand the experience that they had. And around that time, my dad saw an ad for a job for some firm called Millwall Brown who did surveys and stuff. So I chucked my name in the hat. And the interview process was really great, and it excited me about the idea of working with advertising with famous brands and maybe traveling the world a little bit. So I spent the first half of my career there, learning the craft, working with some massive global clients. I spent some time working in Australia, so I managed the brand and comms tracking for Vodafone and MasterCard and a variety of PepsiCo brands over there for a little bit. I've been all over the place with BP and Castrol, for example. So I've been to Singapore, Shanghai, Mumbai, delivering workshops, as well as all over Europe with brands like Carlsberg and Volvo. I then ended up at Relish, which was in 2013, my first stint there. And then I ended up moving in 2019, just about 6 months before the pandemic, to Insights Consulting in Manchester, which is now Humanate. There I did a lot of work managing communities for people like Co-op and Unilever. I went to Blue Yonder for a little bit to do some innovation work and concept development, product developments and things like that, working with people like Bayer. And then I'm back at Relish as of about 6-7 months ago into a director of strategy role. So that's kind of my journey, I suppose. But yeah, the way I got into it was by accident, I suppose. But I've managed to blag a career out of it for now.
Okay. I think that I heard at least like 100 times that someone said that they ended up in our industry by actual accident. So
I know one person.
One person with it. Okay.
Just one. Who did it deliberately, yeah. And his mum owned a fieldwork agency. That's the reason why.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, here. So that's a quite journey around a lot of things there, and we can see that you work with a lot of huge brands. And so, how those brands did they influence your views on like insights and your views on strategy as well?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I've had the opportunities, as I say, to work with a lot of different brands, and I think the biggest thing from an insight or practice point of view, I guess, it's encouraged me to understand that it doesn't really matter what category you end up in. The challenge is always interesting. The goal is always the same. Fundamentally, we're always trying to understand what people think and feel and do. So if you're in a company like Millwall Brown, like I started out, you're not necessarily looking for the clients that you'd love to work on. At least not where I started on the grad scheme, you're given clients to work on, your assigned clients. So, it was a massive list of clients that I worked on, as I mentioned. And, when you start there, you think, well, Land Rover, that sounds cool. Or Red Bull, I worked with for a long time, looking after their tracking and brand equity work as well. Links, or Axe, as it is in Europe, as a 21-year-old, Links is like the peak Links period. That all sounds ace, right? And then you work on the world of yellow fats. Yeah, okay. And then some truck engine oil maybe in Thailand. Okay, yeah, all right, now you're talking. So those last couple, butter and margarine and engine oil, they don't fill me with excitement on the face of it. But when you come down to it, what you're trying to understand is what the end users of those products really want, what they really need, and what makes their lives better. So what can a brand like Castrol do for a scooter rider in Vietnam, right? So that on the face of it doesn't sound interesting, but actually it's everything to those people that ride that scooter. It might be that it's their only means of transport. It's the way they get the kids to school to improve their chances and their prospects in life. It's the only way they can work. So if that scooter breaks, they can't feed their family. And sometimes it's as fundamental as that. So it sounds really high, highfalutin and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's what you're trying to understand. You're understanding why this stuff matters to the people that we talk to. And only by understanding that kind of stuff in any kind of industry that you work in, do you get to the right insights and you get to the things and the products that help those people at the end of the day. So regardless of the category, this is probably the biggest thing it taught me. It sounds great to work with the likes of Red Bull, of course it does, and it was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. But whatever category it is, the challenge is always the same. We are here to try and understand people. We're here to generate insight, generate some innovation and help our clients move forward and make sure that at the end of the day, they're doing something that improves the lives of the people at the end of that chain.
That's really interesting. And of course, at Relish, you work with so many different subscription brands. So could you tell the audience today, why would someone sign up for a subscription? Share some insights.
Yeah, so we work with lots of subscription brands, but also, I suppose, utilities brands too. So anything that kind of has a recurring revenue, I suppose is where we specialise in things that might be water or energy or any of those. The biggest reason from the work that we've done is that people want something they like. They have to sign up to something they enjoy. Sounds really obvious, right? But that is kind of the biggest thing. That's the basic premise. It has to be something people want. But after that, if we're looking at sort of specific drivers to making a choice, you've got to appreciate all of the choices that people have along the way. So price and value come into play. And that is the single biggest reason why people choose to sign up to subscriptions. So when I say value, I'm talking about that in a broad sense. It might be price promotions, discounts to get you to sign up, incentives to get you to sign up in the first place. And they work, of course. But the hard work begins after that, and that's where you've really got to try and differentiate. So getting beyond those factors, people tell us in the studies that we've done that they're looking for convenience, for one. So they need some sort of seamless relationship with that company that they've just invested their money into. They like a sense of something new, so a sense of adventure. That varies by category, of course, but what's new and exciting for one is very different to another. But nevertheless, it's an expectation of something exciting when you get involved with a brand in this way. One of the things I thought was interesting from the work that we've done is that recommendation isn't quite as powerful as everyone seemed to think it was. Or certainly clients seem to think it was. Because there's always incentives to sign up. There's always incentives to recommend to other people. If you take something like HelloFresh, for example, you'll get a month's free food boxes to your door for recommending one of your friends gets involved. And I'm not saying that doesn't work, but it's not the recommendation itself, I don't think, that actually makes that work. That effectively is a discount. It's a promotion that you're benefiting from, because I don't think I would necessarily go and recommend something like HelloFresh unless I was getting something in return. So I think it's an interesting sort of balance to strike between recommendation and what that actually means in terms of a price promotion or a discount. So yeah, value at the top. Value and discounts, promotions at the top in terms of getting people over the line. But the things that make you different are the experience you have with that brand, and then that sense of excitement, something new that keeps you engaged once you get sort of beyond that first few months.
If I just may, and just to build on that, do you see, or at least have you run research where the subscriber preference changes over time throughout the duration of their subscription? So maybe a preference is based on, as you say, value at first, but maybe it changes to something else?
Yeah, I think it does. I think value is always there. That will never go away. And I think people in there who work at agencies will know that whenever you run a driver's analysis, value always hits the top, or price will always hit the top. So that won't ever really go away. It still has to work for people on that most fundamental level. But what happens as you go through, in practical terms, it has to then become about the quality of the experience that you have with that brand and how that relationship develops between the end user. So I think it's, and this is what helps to improve those retention rates, I suppose, and it's the thing that stops people churning. The quality of the product itself, according to the data and the research that we've got, says that, if you don't deliver what people were expecting, they just won't come back. And there's nothing really new in that, and that's the same in any aspect. That's not unique to subscriptions. That's very much the way this all works. You have to deliver what people expected from them in spent. As you carry on, the relationship, the interactions you have with a brand might be, you might have more of them, so they need to work, they need to be simple, they need to be convenient, they need to be seamless. It needs to not be difficult for people to get involved with you. Stress-free, effort-free, all of that kind of stuff. If you start having to really work hard to get what you need from it, or to contact somebody, or to get a question answered, you start questioning why you're continuing on a monthly basis to keep doing that. I think one of the other things, I talked about something new and something different again. So again, if you want to keep somebody involved with you, if you want to retain their custom for another year through to 2-3 years even as a subscriber, something exclusive is, alongside that service and quality is really important. So one of the interesting things we've seen in the data that we've got is the one category where people say they're less likely to churn or least likely to churn is in video content, so Netflix and Prime Video and stuff like that. And I think what they've got over and above other categories is they've got something that's a very binary offer. You either have access to Stranger Things or Wednesday or whatever it was you fancied watching at the time, or you don't have it. Because if you don't have that subscription, then you don't have access to it. Theoretically, if you're borrowing somebody else's login, then of course. But I'm not advocating that in any way, but it happens, right? It happens. So you either have it or you don't. Food is different. If I cancel my HelloFresh boxes, for example, I can still shop at Tesco. So I don't lose it. I'm not suddenly without food. I can't eat if I've cancelled it. You know what I mean? Some have an advantage in that sense, and that's the exclusivity element. And generating that in other categories is difficult. Because, like I say, there are plenty of other places you can get the other things that are on offer. That's where the new and exciting bit comes in. What makes that experience, the product, better and different to others.
Okay, great. I think I counted mine own. I think that I have at this stage I have 6 to 8, but it seems that the list is growing every month. So I'm not sure. But these days it seems that everyone is trying to make their own It really is a business model that a lot of companies are dreaming of, and obviously churn is the worst case that you can have. So do you have any tips how to improve the retention rates on subscriptions?
Yeah, I think it comes back to those things that we've just talked about. So the quality of what you deliver, does it live up to the expectations that you had? The relationship that you have with people is really important. And actually, one of the things that definitely does improve retention, but also improves win back. So people will leave. And I think particularly now, people are sort of trying to rationalise what they're spending. So there will be cuts that people make to their services. One of the key things, I think, is flexibility. That's really important at the moment. So offering a pause version of your subscription, so I can just pause it for a month or two if I want to, that offers a 10% increase in your retention rate. So quite a fundamental difference that makes just by being a little bit flexible. So you're not losing that person altogether. You're just giving them a couple of months off. You invite them back in at some point and say, right, how's it going? Do you want to get back on board? That is something that works. Making it easy to leave is important as well, because as I say, people will want to go at some point. Making that really difficult for people. So I actually cancelled one of my subscriptions this week. This is true. It's not just an anecdote for the purpose of this. It is actually true. It was a food subscription, and I went on. I tried to cancel it, and there was an opportunity to pause my subscription if I wanted to, but I actually wanted to cancel it. I've made my mind up. There is no cancel button on their website at all.
Oh my God.
So I couldn't do it. I had to email them and get into a little conversation with somebody about it and say, right, look, I actually want to cancel. That doesn't make me want to go back to them. That's difficult. It's harder than it needed to be. And so that kind of thing makes it quite difficult. If you can make it simple for people to come and go, then you are more likely to get them back again in 6 or 12 months' time when things change and when their circumstances change again. There's plenty of research, not ours, there's plenty of research out there that shows that making it easy to go does encourage people to come back in again.
Are there any other common mistakes a company makes when they try to retain customers?
Yeah. What's that? I'm gearing myself up for that. A big mistake is just not making your customer feel valued. And I know it's impossible for massive, large-scale businesses, international businesses, to have genuine individual relationships with each customer, right? But it has to feel that way to you on the other end of it. So that's really important. Generating that relationship is hugely important. I think commercially there's a couple of things that maybe go wrong. So auto-renewals are a grey area, I think. It happens quite often without people feeling like they've had enough knowledge of it or enough sight of it. So it's a great idea, and it means you get people renewing, but it can cause problems for the end user depending on how it's done, because it can lack a bit of transparency or honesty. That's a huge area in itself, obviously. We could talk about that for half an hour on its own, I think. But making sure people are fully informed and can make real, genuine choices is really important. There is so much choice out there, and most subscriptions are not binary in the way a content subscription might be. So if there's a lot of choice out there and brands trip up or lose trust, there's a load of others sitting there waiting to take advantage of that. One of the other things, actually, and this is about reducing churn as well to a degree, is that I've spoken to a few payment companies, or payment tech companies, I suppose, and they say a lot of revenue is lost by not chasing down failed payments. So a lot of subscriptions lapse because somebody's credit card expires. And if you don't chase that down, then that's somebody lost that actually might have wanted to stay, but they didn't realise that was the case, and there is a lot of revenue that disappears there that could be banked in another way without some sort of recovery system in place to follow that up. So I think that's a key one as well. I think I talked about that kind of content and personal relationship that you have with people as well. And I think this is related to that, is how you manage your own subscription. So that sense of being personalised and something you can personalise yourself. So good examples of that, I suppose, would be Netflix, would be Prime. You don't necessarily personalise it yourself, but the algorithms behind there, where they take what you watch, they serve up other things you might like. And that becomes theoretically more and more relevant. YouTube is similar, where you have served up things that you feel are more relevant to you. Pulls over a little bit in my house because my kids watch Dan TDM and do Perfect and people playing Rocket League. So I get that in my feed. Oh, yeah, it's not for me. But in theory, it works. And that's good. Food is a good example as well, where you can be more actively involved in that personalisation. And again, it's that level of engagement. So HelloFresh or Gusta, you get to choose the dishes you have through your door on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, however often you have it. And you are therefore you feel like it's something that's bespoke and designed just for you and your family.
Huw, so you're trying to say that actually personalization isn't just putting client's name in that email, and that's it. So the most important part of that is to actually to build the software or whatever it is based on their actual needs. So that's the most important part of the personalization, right?
Yeah, it's got to feel like it's yours. It has to feel like it belongs to you. And, we want this in all aspects of what we do these days. We've become used to everything being tailored to just the way we like it, because that's the kind of society we seem to have developed. And that doesn't really change in this context as well. People want it to feel like it's their own version of it and something that they have control over. That I suppose is the important thing.
Okay. So how can a company effectively communicate the value of the product they're trying to get to their potential clients in subscription?
That's a really good question. I think it's about understanding, back to the very beginning, it's about understanding people and how those people consume your product. So what is it that makes your product special in the first place, that makes the customer want it as an ongoing part of their life? And then you show them. So your contact with them, how it's used, what role does it play, how does it enhance those moments in your life that you've chosen to bring up to input. I think coffee is a good example here, I think. So might be something you subscribe to, something you've got an alternative here every day.
Sorry to interrupt. I think that your mic is a little bit off.
Is it? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's better. Yeah.
Is that better?
That's okay. That's just COVID.
I might have knocked it. Talk with my hands. So coffee, I said, was probably a good example here, where you subscribe to it because you want something that's different to your regular, everyday, instant coffee. And you might, let's say you drink 5-6 cups of coffee a day, maybe more, but you're not going to take all of those out of your premium, expensive subscription. You'll spread it between your everyday coffee and your subscription coffee. So the point is, and the point that I think you need to understand and talk to people about is, when do you go for that subscription version? What is the moment that requires a particular experience? And then what does that experience look like? So this is an example. It's not subscription based, I suppose, but some years ago I worked with Philips on their comms development and concepts for coffee machines that they make. And this was all about identifying the moments in your life where a special coffee experience, like right through from making it and that experience of making it right through to drinking it, was important and powerful. So we had lots of different scenarios in which that might become something that matters to you. It might be when you sit down in your own space, in your own room, and you put on a record and you listen to on a record, because I'm like 100 years old, put on a record and sit down with your coffee and relax now. Or it might be a date and you've got somebody coming in, or it might be just that bit where you take a break from your work day and you think this needs to be not 30 seconds making a drink, but this needs to be 15 minutes where the whole experience happens and I just feel like I've switched off properly. So that is always about that experience adding value. And that's how I would communicate to people, I think. It's like, where does that subscription and the product I deliver to you, where does it add value to your day? And if you can find what that is, if you can understand your subscribers and why they bothered to get involved with you in the first place, and then talk about those moments, those things that are exciting for them, that's, I think, how you start to communicate the value beyond just the price that you're paying.
Just making some technical changes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Quick one. So maybe that's a perfect segue. So in a sense, what role, working with that coffee example, does customer feedback actually have an impact on the subscription services? And what's an effective way to gather that sort of information from the customers?
I mean, you expect me to say this, but it's vital, obviously, to but it is genuinely, you need to be constantly checking in to make sure the journey that you've got is going well and that people get the experience that they signed up for. And looking forward, once you get beyond that trial period, maybe you need to know the experience that you want in the future is coming down the line. So you have to talk to people about it. You have to understand that a subscription is a relationship, and I think it should be treated as one. I know there's plenty of schools of thought out there that say people don't have relationships with brands, and there are some very high-profile books that tell you those things don't happen. And that might be true of a can of Coke or a chocolate bar or something like that. But I think once you enter into a subscription arrangement, there is necessarily a little bit more involvement in that. And I think it's higher risk. It's an investment. You as a customer are more invested in it. And that means I think you'll examine the value you're getting more. You want to see it evolve and change and meet your needs more and more as you go along. So as a company, how do you know what those needs are? What are the expectations that people have? how do you meet them? You have to talk to people to know, to get the best answers to that. So those people who are shelling out their hard-earned cash to spend some time with you as a brand, you need to understand what that experience is like for them. So customer feedback is absolutely everything, I think, in this instance, because the more you understand that experience, the more you can tailor it, the more you can improve it, and make sure you cultivate a long-term relationship with your existing subscribers and reduce that level of churn. But also those people who come up after them, so those new people who come in, those new acquisitions, you've managed to hopefully refine and hone that offer that you have through understanding each of those consumers that are already with you.
Okay. I think it would be interesting. Do you remember any particularly funny examples from some of the customer feedback and subscriptions?
We had, I mean, this isn't necessarily about subscriptions specifically in terms of the response, but we did do something on, it was a personal care subscription.
Oh, I think you just blocked the microphone.
Did I? Sorry, for waxing. So it was like leg wax for women, and we had a female-only sample. And we did get a bloke called Steve who somehow filtered through the net, sent us a video of himself. That was fun. Not that I ever wanted to see that again, but it was certainly not. Yeah, sometimes you get these mystery groups, right? We've all done it. But yeah, that was probably an interesting one where things have got a bit funny. I think generally it's usually around poor customer service is where you get the things that are. I mean, they're not funny because they're serious and they cause people problems and they cause businesses problems. But it's definitely the nature of those interactions that people have. The conversations, the way that people tend to find it's the way people feel very entitled about what they should or shouldn't get as a customer is often quite interesting, and they might perhaps miss the point of what they were dialing in for or calling in for in the first place.
I can already imagine Steve Guy, so I can. But yeah, okay.
Don't mind Steve. You'll never get that out of your head.
Okay, so let's switch back to actually Relish, and what are you guys doing to help your clients to put customers first, and what is exactly your role in that, Huw? Can you talk us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So my role specifically these days is a bit less project focused, but it's more about developing the offer that we've got, I suppose, and making sure that we really are getting to the heart of what customers want and need, and being able to deliver that in as impactful a way as we can to the clients that we've got. I'm going to do a little plug for it, but just next week at Works, colleague of mine, Gemma.
Yeah, I think you're blocking the microphone again. Sorry.
Oh, my, sorry, it's just here. It's right in front of me. Is that okay?
That's much better. Thank you.
Yeah. So Gemma is at the Works next week on Thursday. He's doing Peace with Southern Water about how we have used some quite in-depth calls to talk about really quite complex industry, quite complex set of problems, which is about the future of water security and things like that. But we've made multi-million-pound decisions off the back of the insight that we've put together about how they protect the future of water quality and all that kind of stuff in that Southern Water region. So there's a really interesting talk that Gemma will do with Nick Eves, who is a client of ours at Quirks next week. But that will really give you a sense of how we use research to put customers right at the heart of the decision making of a massive business like that. Beyond that, so more generally, I mean, our team is really varied in terms of the experience we've got. So we've got ad agency people, we've got client side folk, we've got people with different agency experience, we've got behavioural science aficionados, we've got customer experience experts. So we get customers, we understand customers. And that comes from Relish being historically a qualitative agency. So way back in the midst of time, I'm a quantitative specialist by trade, but Relish started out as a qual agency and it's built in, I think, to our nature to want to understand and to go beyond the obvious answers that we get, to try and find, what is important and what people are saying and how that translates then into what they do and then what companies can do to act upon that. So We try and focus on the journey that customers are engaged in. We then try to translate that, say, into the actions that brands can take. So we tend to break things down into 4 buckets, and this is kind of the offer and the approach that we're developing, I suppose. So we talk about exploration, which is the stuff you consciously do when you're thinking about a purchase, but also, I think really importantly, it's the stuff you subconsciously do. It's all the stuff you're exposed to when you're out and about, what you see when you're scrolling through your phone or watching TV. It's all of those things that can influence you at some point down the line and create branded memories or land the brand keys that you have. We have a ton of experience in terms of brand and comms development, what you should say and how and when and where you should say it. We most recently, we had some scripts through from one of our clients, and we're helping to advise them at the very earliest stage in terms of how they move that into production. So that's that kind of exploration. If you imagine this as a set of concentric circles, do go on our website. There's a moving thing which tells you about this. The outside circle, exploration, that's what it's all about, that first bit. The next bit is about engaging with customers, I suppose. And at that point, it's about when people move into that more active phase of making a choice into a purchase window. So it could be at a shelf in a supermarket or when you're shortlisting cars. It doesn't really matter what it is. But at some point, you're going to be more positive about making that decision. And that exploration, all the stuff that's influenced you along the way, will help to make that decision. The key aspect, I suppose, of that is being there when that brand being there when you're making that decision. So, we'll talk about giving yourself the best chance. So there we do things like pack testing, or we'll do UNAs or segmentations to make sure we're talking to people at the right time, in the right place, with the right collateral, so that it stands out and make sure that we deliver as much as possible at that engage phase. Third one's experience. It's kind of in the inside circle, I suppose. So the experiences can be when you've bought it, and it's how you then experience it. So let's say I sign up to Sky, for example. What happens then? How does the installation go? How does the first month of billing go? Do I get everything I said I was going to get in the package that I signed up for? All of those kind of things feeds into experience. But it can start before that. So the experience bit can be just when you're having those conversations with somebody. So again, it feels like I did this week just because I was coming up to talk here, but I changed my broadband provider this week as well. This is what happens when I'm off ill.
Perfect.
With a time on my hands, and I do stuff like this. So I changed my broadband provider, and the first one was I was with BT. Had a conversation with them. It was okay. Didn't feel like they were really that interested in hanging on to me or making things easy or making things substantially cheaper, actually, as well. And I got in touch with EE, which I know EE and BT part of the same group. But I've more than halved my broadband cost, and it was super easy. It took me 5 minutes to make that call and make that decision on the call with those people. So that is all part of that experience, which leads you to the fourth bit, which is the middle of the circle, which is convert, which is when you make or encourage somebody to make that choice and make that decision, that purchase decision. So that is the way in which we structure our research, I suppose, or structure our thinking. And then we try within that to find, there's lots of different things you can use to untangle all of those different pieces for consumers. But then we try and put them back into sort of practical aspects that brands can do in each of those kind of buckets. So how are people exploring your brand? How do you engage them, and how do you keep them engaged? What is the experience like, that journey from start to finish? What is all of that like? And then, what happens when you do convert them? What's the onboarding like? What's the beginning of that relationship like? And then, of course, you get thrown out of that middle again, straight back into the explore bit, because once you've made a decision, all those people you ignored and rejected this time around start all over again, trying to encourage you to come back in 12 months' time when your contract's up again. So it's an ever moving feast that we try and understand.
That's really interesting how you almost mirror the traditional purchase funnel, from lack of awareness to some awareness to consideration to purchase. And I'm guessing a big part of your role in Relish is just giving more insight at each particular stage, as you just mentioned.
Exactly that, yeah. So trying to understand, how do people want to be engaged? What are they? How do they behave when they're looking for information? How well does that stuff land? So, as I said, that explore phase is really important, and something we know really well from that communication side of things. How do you get people to engage and be part of come on that journey with you as a brand, right through to spending time with customers. So we run quite substantial what we call customer closeness programs, which we've done with the likes of Asda over the years. We've done them with Paddy Power, with Betters and things like that. So where we put people from the upper echelons of those businesses right in front of their everyday consumers, which can be an eye-opener for those people who work in West London at Paddy Power and then find themselves in a betting shop in Leeds. That's an experience that they need to have. They have to understand what happens in real life when they get out of that little West London bubble. And these things are really important, and that they're hugely valuable. We've run these things for years with clients like that, and they continue to add value to what they do and the decisions that they make.
That's interesting. You mentioned that. There's a famous influencer called Huw Williams that talks a lot about the concept of leadership, and one of the core solutions to leadership is to really visualize the problems that you're having on the field. So maybe, as I said, Paddy Power. I remember one of our old clients at BP. There was an agency partner that actually worked at the BP stall just to get a better insight in terms of the common, let's call it, customer experience challenges that you face. I guess that's talking to consumers really is an eye-opener, right?
Absolutely, and being there yourself is really important, and we try to do that where we can and where it makes sense. You mentioned BP and sort of forecourt experience. One of the last things I did at Millwall Brown was there was a point at which BP were going to use a single pump, essentially, to pump diesel and unleaded and basically all their fuels through one single nozzle, if you like. And we stood on a forecourt and we watched people do that, and we watched people get confused by it. And there was another thing they had to do. There were steps they had to take to make it work in the right way, press the right button, make sure you got the right fuel, all that kind of stuff, risk attached to that. So watching people do that, and actually seeing how they responded and how confused they got, and we put cameras on the pumps and we watched their reactions and their faces and their timing. So, there's no substitute in a situation like that for watching what those people do and seeing in real life what those people do. Being right there with consumers, ordinary customers who don't know what this stuff is, it's hugely valuable.
Maybe that's the perfect segue, actually. So, talking about customer centricity, what mistakes do you see that companies often make not being very customer centric?
I think they don't treat customers as individuals. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I think that companies make. They just don't. They treat you as a commodity, as a product. You're just part of their revenue calculations. You're not necessarily an individual, and that's it's really important. It's a massive mistake to make, I think, when these days we have so much choice. So you have to be able to feel like that company is working for you in some way, is creating something that delivers exactly what you want when you need it. If you get away from that, and as Maren said, it can come down to something as simple as not putting your name in an email. Dear valued customer, nothing makes me feel less valued than being addressed as dear valued customer. And that's exactly it. You should know my name, even if you're Netflix. You should know who I am. At least your systems should know who I am. That, I think, is the single biggest mistake. Is just not remembering that customers are often just the heart of your business. I think you find that there's perhaps an element of complacency too with certain brands. So I think I'm going to go back into the mists of time here, but I mentioned before that I worked in M&S, and at that point I was just working on the tills in a shop in Wigan, and it was the year that M&S turned their first £1 billion profit, and I think they thought they'd done it. They completed retail. That was it, all done and dusted, and they didn't have to do anything else. And we all know kind of what's happened to M&S in the subsequent 20-something years. But they weren't ready for the way that category changed and the way that the world changed. So you've got H&M who come and deliver, incredibly good and cheap basics. which cut the legs off from underneath M&S, who were known for that kind of stuff. You've got, although they had some successes, let's say with Autograph, George Davis launched the Peruna range there, but you've got something like Zara that brings incredibly quick turnaround from catwalk to high street. Again, something that M&S weren't ready for and couldn't cope with. And these popped up all over the high street through sort of those early 2000s, mid 2000s, and it made a real mess of what M&S thought they'd achieved. And we're still seeing the impact of that now. So, you're seeing in my hometown. So I'm from Wrexham, and M&S was the heart of the town centre when I was a kid. Hated going there with my parents, but it was the heart of the town centre. They're about to close M&S in Wrexham, despite all the Hollywood money. It's still they're losing the heart of the town centre a little bit. There will be a food version of it there, but there'll be no clothing version of M&S anymore, and that feels like the end of an era to me. For people of a certain age, I guess it does. But that's the impact of what happened back then, 20-something years ago, where they thought, you know what, we've done it. We've nailed it, £1 billion profit, we're done, right? You're never done. And I think that's probably the mistake. You are never finished. There's always something to do. There's always work to do. And there's always something that you can improve upon. And you always need to be looking over your shoulder at what's coming next.
And maybe just jumping on that, on the concept of you're never done, you're never finished.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you work internally with your teams to always, let's call it, adapt to the changing landscape?
It's exactly the same. We're looking at what's happening elsewhere. We're looking at what other people are doing. We're looking at the way tech changes our industry. I mean, you all know as well as anybody how much we're talking about AI at the moment, and the difference that can make, and the good it can do or the harm it can do. What is it? What does it mean for our industry? I'm not going to answer that here because I don't have the answer. And as I said earlier, I'm like 100 years old, so what do I know about AI? But it's it's the kind of thing we are considering. We're talking about and trying to understand what the impact is. Things like VR and AR. We to be honest, we dabbled in VR research probably 6-7 years ago, and it was good. Don't get me wrong, it was good fun. It was ace. We had a little petrol station built with all the stuff in. You could go in and like swipe it all off the shelves if you wanted and stuff. It was brilliant fun. Not sure how useful it was as a research tool, but anyway. But no, genuinely, it was really good. You can go in and you can pick up packs and you can look at packs and cans and turn them around and all of that kind of stuff, and it gives you a sense of that product and how you interact with it in the real world. So we kind of looked at that some time ago. So there are still bits of that we're interested in. I think we've developed from VR because it's expensive, and it's not easy to administer necessarily. I think augmented reality is probably where it is in terms of that kind of tech. So those are the sort of things we look at and try to make sure that we're on top of. That's a big part of my role, as well as to make sure that we are aware of what's going on. And the thing is, I think the really important thing here is what difference does it make? Because we're not going to do these things just because they're there. They've got to add something to what we already do. And still big believers in developing as much as we can and sort of developing the tech that's available. But also, as we've just spoken about, there is no substitute for being in a room with an actual person in real life and understanding what happens with them, or spending time in their home or putting a camera in their home and watching what they do. There's a lot of things that, for want of a better word, old-fashioned market research still does better than anything else. So it's really about picking and choosing what we do and making sure that the client's objectives are the things that are met at the end of the day. That has to come first for us. It is the most important thing. If we don't deliver something that helps our clients move forward, then we don't have a business at the end of the day. So the tech is great, but we do keep an eye on it. But the biggest thing we have to do, and the thing that we are never done with, back to the question, is answering those client questions and helping our clients move forward.
Okay, I love that. Let's switch to the Q&A. I think we are now done with our part. We can open a couple of questions for our dear guests, just around the other side of the view from you, Huw.
Sure.
Borna, are we going to change the laptop to them, or are we going to keep it like this? What do you think? For the Q&A, they're going to ask questions.
I think it's fine. If it's at 5 p.m., it's...
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a question? Someone? Okay.
I did have one earlier.
Can you hear that? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I switched my microphone off for a second, but yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So you were speaking about exclusivity much earlier, and I was just kind of thinking. So, what can new players do in a space that doesn't have exclusivity? For example, like Gusto and HelloFresh. So, if a new player wants to come into the market, what can they do to try to drive that traffic away if there is no exclusivity necessarily there? Because it's all the same products in terms of like the ingredients that everybody's using. And then second part to that is how big of an impact do marketing and advertising make for them to be able to chip away in the market share?
Thanks for that question. The first part, I think, is it might not be exclusivity that is the answer for a brand in that instance, because it is, as you say,
You just lost you last 5 seconds.
sorry. How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay. So it might not be exclusivity in that instance. It might be just finding a point of difference. And the thing that's different, the thing that sets you apart from HelloFresh or Gusto, is the service that you deliver to your customers, or that you are specialised in a certain area. So it might be there's a food box subscription called Pasta Evangelists. They just deal with pasta, obviously. But if that's your thing, if that's what you love, then great. That's something that you can do that's a little bit different, that's a bit of a treat, serves the same kind of purpose as a HelloFresh, but is maybe something of a niche that you can try and do differently. Something that feels like a staple and feels very ordinary is actually elevated quite a bit through the offer that they've got. So it might be about that. So it's, in terms of its exclusivity, yes, it's still a food box. Yes, it's still delivering something you can eat and serve to your kids or whatever it might be. But it's delivered in a way that is that feels like they're the experts in that. So you're getting the best possible experience of that. And that is the bit that I guess feels slightly more exclusive in that sense. The second part of your question, in terms of advertising and media and so on, I think it's got a huge role to play. It's very difficult, I think, especially if you're up against the likes of HelloFresh and Gusto, to cut through. You're not going to do it organically, or it's going to be very hard to do it organically. So there has to be something behind that. There has to be some strategy and some campaign behind that, which pushes, first and foremost, the awareness of what it is that you do. Very, very simply, if people don't know you exist, they won't come and find out anything more about you. So it's fundamental. I think the media changes. In the old days, it would have been get yourself on TV and do that. And that's still, as an awareness driver, it's still a massive, massive thing to do. But the cost obviously is huge. And if you're a startup in an area that's quite saturated, then again, you've got to think quite differently, behave quite differently. And it might be that you use your social channels slightly differently. So we've actually, last week, we did a thing at Relish where we got a company called Bold Bean Company who came to us. They do subscription jars of beans. They're excellent, by the way, really good as well. But they've done all of that through socials. They've done all of that through social media to generate some level of interest and excitement. And then they've worked really hard to place themselves in the right place. And so they've got a listing in Waitrose, and they are chest height, I guess, which is the perfect height. I suppose these days, given shopping lists tend to be on phones and people are walking around with their head down quite a lot when they go into store these days. So they've worked really hard to do that. So those kind of campaigns and that kind of, not advertising as such in the way that you might think about it traditionally, but that level of effort into your marketing and putting yourself in the right place is the thing that's going to provide you the platform from which to grow.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe we have time just for one more. Yes, Vic.
Hi, Huw. It's Vic here. Thank you so much for your time today. It was really interesting to hear about the subscription services and all the different kind of clients you work with. I was just thinking, are there any new areas or industries or products or services where we could see subscription models coming in which currently don't exist?
That's a tough one. I had to think about this today because I had a feeling something like this might come up. And I was trying to think of an area that isn't well served by a subscription. And you start with books or personal care products or razors or wine or I basically had to look around this room and that I'm in right now, and I thought I could subscribe to all of these things. That includes Lego and stuff like that, so the wouldn't survive. You can subscribe to all of it. So a lot of it exists already. There's probably one that I was thinking of while I was sat in here that I don't think works very well, which I know isn't your question, but I will come back to that in a sec. But one is records. I keep seeing a thing for a record subscription. Grow your record collection, right? By subscribing to it, and you get random records. Who wants that? You buy the record you like, right? You don't subscribe to random things you don't want. There are other ways to discover what it is that you might not have heard of. That's what I think is hard. One that I think might take off is cars. And this is it's a little bit like hire purchase, I guess, and the kind of agreements that people have, but it does work on a slightly different basis. But you'll see the likes of Volvo, for example, are doing a car subscription where you pay, depending on the amount you pay, depends on the car you get, but let's say £600 to £800 a month, and you get a C30 or an XC90, whatever it is you decided you wanted to experience. I don't think they've really taken off massively. I don't feel like they've really sort of gained a huge amount of traction because there are still other options available to get your cars. But I think that the associated benefits of that, the servicing costs, the changing your car out every 6 months if that's what you want to do, without penalties for early exits and things like that you might have on finance deals. That is something I think that might be quite interesting. You might see people start to take off on that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Huw. Can we get a round of applause for Huw for saying thanks so much, especially regarding the actually circumstances that you joined. I hope that you are soon going to be well and that you're going to be back on your feet. So yes. Yeah,
I'm feeling great. Look, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening and your time tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Huw.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap up here, and please stay around for 2-3 more drinks. And now is the most important part where we discuss this talk and where we have more drinks. Okay, so feel free to stay around.